Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. And I'm welcoming back our expert panel today as we examine the issues and indeed controversies. Joining me are the Honorable Joe Oliver, former federal finance minister and natural resources minister, Sandra Pupatello, a former trade and economic development minister for Ontario, and the Honorable Gary Marr, a former Alberta minister and trade representative. He's now heading up the Canada West Foundation. Welcome to all of you.
Hello.
Good morning.
I guess maybe Gary, start with you for obvious reasons, but the biggest national news story anyway that's making the rounds these days was the Trudeau government's climb down on the carbon tax for home heating oil. Love to get your reaction first and then go around the table here.
I think it's quite an interesting development in the last week. I mean, since 2015, this has been the Trudeau government's flagship piece of legislation on how they're going to deal with GHG emissions and meeting their nationally determined commitments, their NDCs under the Paris Accord. And it's a complete reversal of that policy. Ironically, one that permits home heating oil in Atlantic Canada to continue, which has a much higher GHG profile than, say, natural gas. And so it has resulted in pushback in other parts of the country. You've seen Premier Moe from Saskatchewan say that he's going to direct the provincially owned utility to stop collecting, the taxes on natural gas. Premier Smith is not in the same position, but shares the same view. She's not in the same position because we don't have in Alberta a provincial utility provider. But Premier Eby from British Columbia has pushed back hard, saying that there should be a greater recognition of home heating bills across the country. You've had Premier Ford taking a similar position as Premier Smith. And so this is a huge issue that has caused great grief. And it was a big surprise in my estimation, and an announcement that did not appear to have much foreshadowing to it. And then the subsequent commentary of people like Minister Hutchings saying, well, you should really vote for more Liberal MPs if you want better policy. And that is completely inappropriate, in my opinion. When Conservative MPs have talked about the crushing cost of implementing a carbon tax, they've been told by the government that they are simply climate change deniers. And then when Liberal MPs speak up against the carbon tax on home heating bills in Atlantic Canada, they're said the reaction is, well, they're speaking up and being responsible representatives of their constituencies and representing their ridings well. I mean, that just can't possibly be correct in the circumstances where a federal government, is responsible for all Canadians, not just those that vote Liberal and not those that vote Conservative. That's not surely what our fathers of Confederation had in mind in the system of parliamentary democracy that we currently have in this country.
Joe, we got about a minute before the break, but we'll let you start at least on your reaction to this.
Well, look, I agree with Gary, and I thought that the minister's comments were outrageous. But this is the latest self-inflicted injury that the Prime Minister is suffering. There are a number of reactions. Those on the left view it as a betrayal. Those on the right say that it's a recognition that it can't work, that politically it's not viable, and economically and scientifically it's unjustified. But in addition to that, I think everybody considers it a bit of a cheap political trick because the Liberals are very strong in Atlantic Canada. The poll numbers for the Liberal Party have sort of they seem to be in a state almost of collapse. Right. 25% to 40%, I think was the latest.
I'm gonna cut you off there. We will get back to you after the break, Joe. So hold that thought, and then Sandra will hear from you as well. Stay with us. The debate is ongoing.